The coming of the clans has brought dramatic changes to the Inner Sphere. Where once the lines of power and ambition were drawn 5 ways, 6 when Comstar became politically active, allowing the great houses to balance their enemies against one another, now the lines are much more complex. In addition to each house's 5 traditional enemies, now they must also take the clans into account. From all indications, the individual clans making up the invasion force are often just as divided as the Inner Sphere and their lords. Background: The Exodus. Stefan Amaris the Usurper has been blamed for initiating the centuries of conflict known as the Succession Wars, and his name is cursed among the successor states to this day. But when Amaris betrayed the young Richard Cameron, the First Lord of the Star League, in December 2766, claiming the throne of the Star League for himself, he not only set in motion the events that would begin the Succession Wars, but he also triggered another that culminated in the present clan invasion of the Inner Sphere. Of course, he didn't accomplish all of this entirely on his own. Much of the blame for the current state of affairs falls on the shoulders of the Council Lords of Star League at the time. Those lords had appointed Alexander Kerensky as regent of the Star League during the years of Richard Cameron's minority, then thought to strip Kerensky of that authority in the wake of the young First Lord's assassination. Kerensky didn't see his position as one of personal power, however, but rather of responsibility, and he wasn't willing to abrogate that responsibility at the whim of a group of politically motivated sharks like Amaris and the other House Lords. His first action following Amaris' usurpation was to gather the Star League defence forces together to drive the traitor from his stolen place on the throne. During this period, the House Lords didn't take sides, though the Lyrans, Capellans and Federated Sons sent equipment and supplies to worlds taken by the general's troops. Once Kerensky had accomplished his mission and Amaris had been executed, he shocked the Inner Sphere by collecting his troops and leaving explored space ostensibly forever. This marked the beginning of the period that the clans know as the Exodus. Though not all units of the regular army followed Kerensky into his exile, most did, taking their families with them. No one knew exactly where they were headed, but they had faith in Kerensky and believed he must have a plan. That faith would be sorely tested over the next few years, however, as the fleet pushed further and further from human-occupied space without encountering habitable worlds. Along the way, some of Kerensky's followers revolted. General Kerensky quickly quashed the rebellion and summarily executed the leaders in an attempt to demonstrate the need for rigid discipline and loyalty if he and his people were to have any hope of surviving. Seeds of Change. Eventually, Kerensky and his followers encountered what came to be known as the Pentagon, 5 marginally habitable planets some 1,300 light-years from Terra. The planets were less than a single jump apart and only a few jumps away from a large globular cluster, a thick dust nebula that they christened Kerensky's Cloak, that hid them from the Inner Sphere. As Kerensky and his people set about colonizing the Pentagon worlds of Arcadia, Babylon, Circe, Dagda and Eden, it became painfully obvious that they had a disproportionate number of warriors compared to labourers, techs, scientists and even administrators. Kerensky's solution to the problem was simple and direct. He established a series of gruelling tests that would eliminate all but the very best of his warriors, who would remain in the military. The rest would be retested for their suitability to serve in other capacities. Civil War. The struggle to conquer the inhospitable Pentagon worlds disheartened many of Kerensky's followers, and the demotion of so many regular troops to the rank of labourer or tech left a great many more dissatisfied. Though the exiles from the Inner Sphere prospered in their new homes, some of Kerensky's followers resented the ascetic lifestyle and severe discipline on which these successful colonies were based. These and other tensions finally erupted in civil war on the planet Eden shortly before the general's death. While preparing for his campaign, the grand old man suffered a massive heart failure. The general's designated successor was his son Nicholas, perhaps even more of an idealist than his father. It was Nicholas who transformed his father's dream of one day restoring the Star League to the Inner Sphere into a near mystical vision of the future. Unwilling to waste military resources on putting down the rebellion, he decided to lead his followers in another exodus from destructive civil strife. He and his people travelled to Strana Mekti, one of the worlds hidden in the Veil of Stars in the Kerensky cluster. On Strana Mekti, which is Russian for Land of Dreams, Nicholas and his followers guarded their technology and went on with the business of survival while the Pentagon worlds destroyed themselves and their environments in a short 20 years of civil war. By the time Nicholas returned to retake the Pentagon worlds, they found the planets near devastated. The battle to win back the Pentagon was nevertheless bitterly fought. In the end, many of the survivors welcomed Nicholas as a saviour, and just as Nicholas had left the rebels to drive themselves to their own destruction, the clans, who characterised themselves as the Star League in exile, believed that the successor states would pound each other into barbarism, paving the way for their heirs of Kerensky to return as the saviours of humanity. Caste System. It was during the 20 years of Nicholas's retreat to the Kerensky cluster that the concept of clans first came into being. Seeking to further cast off cultural ties to the successor state, Nicholas reorganised his society completely, dividing it into 20 clans, and replacing the old military system of 4 mechs to a lance with a new one of 5 mechs to a star. He created a 5-tier caste system: labourers, merchants, techs, scientists, and finally warriors, in ascending order of prestige. The labourer caste he categorised as the muscle of the clans, merchants as the bones, techs as the fingers, scientists as the mind, and warriors as its blood and soul. Because familiarity breeds expertise, and because it is assumed that genetics creates lines of individuals suited more for one occupation than another, most citizens of the clans live, work, and die in the caste to which they were born. But every citizen is tested for individual propensity, and it isn't impossible for a child born to one caste to be elevated or even demoted to another. Nicholas also established a genetic program for the warrior caste, whereby the best fighters contribute genetic material to a pool from which the next generation of fighters are created. The embryos of these new generations are cared for in artificial wombs, and each new group of individuals created from a particular set of genetic material are raised together in a sibco, which means sibling company. Due to the intensity of the testing of the mech warrior caste, each sibco is destined to lose 40 to 60% of their members by the time they are of an age to even become a warrior. By the time they reach their late 30s, the remainder will be considered too old to have retained their edge. They are often assigned to raising and training the next generation of fighters. It was also during this period of reformation that the concept of blood names were established. While most clan warriors have no surname, bearing instead the name of their clan, a few of the most elite can win the right to bear one of the surnames of the loyal warriors who went into exile on Strana Mekti with Nicholas Kerensky. There are 760 of these blood names, with no more than 25 individuals bearing a single blood name at any one time. The most valued blood name is, as might be expected, Kerensky itself. Only when one of the blood name die can another individual fight for the right to bear that name. The battles are intense, as often as not leaving a string of dead contenders along the way. This is because winning a blood name is one of the highest honours amongst the clans, guaranteeing that the warrior's genes will be used in future generations, and ensuring that the holder's name will live forever in clan lore. Clan government. In Nicholas's system, 2 Khans for each clan are selected from among the blood-named, one viewed as senior and the other as their junior. The Khans of all the clans together form the Grand Council. During times of crisis, they choose one from amongst their members to serve as the Il Khan, or Chief Warlord, to lead them. Other castes have their own leaders too, but it is the Khans who have final say in any decision within a clan. Politics within the clans can be Machiavellian, but the militaristic nature of the society makes it no surprise that every decision can be challenged to a trial by combat. At present, there are 2 major political groupings within the clans, the Crusaders and the Wardens. The Crusaders believe that it is the clan's duty to conquer the Inner Sphere and reshape it into the image in order to return the Star League to its rightful place. The Wardens disagree, arguing that it is their duty of the clans to hold themselves in readiness to protect the Inner Sphere from outside dangers. Surprisingly, it has been a Warden, Ulrich Kerensky of Clan Wolf, who has served as Il Khan during most of the recent invasion. Il Khan Ulrich believed it was better to lead the clans cautiously, letting them learn the strengths of successor state culture by experience, instead of letting a Crusader Il Khan push the clans forward in a bloody conquest. The invasion. Although many believe that the clan invasion began in 3050, its first action goes back much further than that. In truth, the invasion began in 3005, when Wolf's Dragoons first appeared in the Inner Sphere. As their name might suggest, Wolf Dragoons are actually a unit from Clan Wolf, in this case composed primarily of freebirths, those individuals from non-warrior castes who tested highly enough to become warriors. They were outfitted with old-style Star League mechs, better than that to which the successor states technologically had degenerated, but antiquated compared to the clan's newer Omnimex, and sent these to serve the great houses of the Inner Sphere as mercenaries. Their real mission was to gather intelligence for the upcoming clan invasion. What almost no one amongst the clans knew, however, was the Dragoons were later given a secret Warden mission to begin preparing the successor states for the upcoming battle with the clans. Having analysed Dragoon reports, highly placed wardens had decided that it was the Kerensky dream to preserve successor state society, even from its own people. There is no doubt the Inner Sphere would have fallen within 2 short years since the invasion in 3050 had not Wolf's Dragoons rallied the leadership of the Inner Sphere to fight against the clans.